Hello and you're very welcome to Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast coming at you weekly. I am your host, Peter Cinnamon, who has finally defrosted from this weekend. Even Captain America would have said, now that was cold. This Saturday, Shamrock Park's pitch required some extra juice to get the grass surface ready for kickoff, and while you might not be able to flame through our 3G pitch, at least you can play a game on it when it gets a tiny bit frosty. We may be short on games this week, but we are high on chat. Portadown wait almost 9 months for a league win, and then 2 come in the same week. Kinda. Dungannon carve up Carrick, Coleraine continue their tear, and Michael O'Neill does a Niall Curry and returns to manage his home team. Sound good? Good. I am not one to brag, but I did happen to attend exactly the same game as a Mr. Santa Claus this weekend. He was in his red and white garb, he had a bell and everything. Perhaps he was there to give the Portadown grounds team a little hand with getting that pitch ready, you know. I don't know if flamethrowers run on Christmas spirit or not, but for me, bad luck on my head, as I have booked a guest this week whose game wasn't blessed with such, let's call it, festive intervention. But he has seen some things in his time covering this league. The type of things that would drive Kevin McAllister to do the type of things that he has done. But not this fine chap. He keeps coming back for more every Saturday through a whirlwind of highs and lows. He is one half of the Glenavon media crew. He is a co-host of the Mournview Monthly Fancast. It is the podcast debut of Dave Watt.
Thanks for having me.
It is a delight to have you.
It's a very big build-up. I hope I can live up to that billing.
I totally believe you do. You didn't have a game this weekend. You've been studying even harder. No distractions with what was going on with Glenavon. We'll start off with it. It was supposed to be going down at the Oval. People were sweating all over the country if their game was going to go ahead. Pretty much, if you had a plastic pitch, it meant it did go ahead. Thus, the Oval is not blessed with such amenities. Disappointed, or did you expect it when you woke up in the morning, flipped open your curtains and saw sheets of ice pretty much everywhere across the country?
I think, to be totally honest, I mean, we were chatting on Friday as a media team as to what our arrangements were for Saturday, and we were sort of going, well, let's get a few graphics ready just in case the game's off, because we'd seen the weather and seen the forecast, and with the Oval being quite open, I think it was more of a hopeful pitch inspection. But I think we sort of knew from Friday afternoon that it was highly unlikely that it was going to be on.
So you weren't out there. Not that it's up to you guys. Obviously, that's Glentoran who's got to get themselves going, but get the hair dryers out, maybe some more significantly larger heating equipment.
Well, yeah, our neighbours across the ban had a flamethrower, and we had a good laugh at that. But it sort of made us hark back to about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, to a game that we really wanted to get played in the Irish Cup against Loughgall, and we had people with cars on the pitch to defrost the goal mouths, and we had people down. I mean, people were there. Gary himself was there till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then guys were back there from first light. And when the news came through that we passed the inspection, although I'm not sure how much grass was left on the pitch at the time.
You'd think there'd be enough hot air swirling around mid-Ulster to not have such concerns in relation to pitch dramas.
Yeah, I mean, our current groundsman, David McClure, big shout out to him. He has been really good with our pitch in the last number of years since he's been there. But he said if anybody tried that while he's been here, they wouldn't get past the main gate. He'd be out with his pitchfork.
They're very protective, that lot. Those grounds people, they are very particular. They don't want anybody around there, and they've got their way of doing things. And you know, it's going to be brought up. This is what happens when these things happen. Famously, the manager of your club is probably the biggest anti-advocate to this, but it does raise the question. Plastic pitches, yay, nay, all the ones who are loving the carpet. We're having a little parade on the weekend saying, hey, look at us doing our moonwalking down our non-frosted carpeted surfaces. Do you warm up to the idea when you look across at all these other games happening, or is this just the way it is?
There's a couple of things. When we've talked about it long and hard. Up until recently, Gary was very much against it, but he did both him and the chairman at the AGM did mention that potentially we may have to look at it. We recently put a new training facility in what used to be the hospital end. The original thought was to have that as 3G. Now, I think the long-term prospect is for it to be that, but more so in recent weeks with chatting to people from other clubs around the league, they're starting to realise that maybe having a 3G pitch or a 4G pitch isn't as cost effective maybe was made out to be originally. They're realising that it costs as much in maintenance, and because there's now so many of them, clubs are now starting to see their income from those pitches maybe reduce. I mean, I talked to somebody fairly recently about Seaview, for example. They have people on that pitch almost 24/7, whether it's the Crusaders teams, male and female, youth, academy, whatever. They have an American football team, I think, training it as well. 11 o'clock some night because it's the only time they can get on. They have a lot of charity matches are played at Seaview. Obviously, the Northern Ireland women's games are played there. So they do get a lot of income from that, but a lot of other teams that have those pitches are starting to see sort of diminishing returns from it. And it's now becoming, well, their margins are certainly less, let's put it that way. And it's making them reconsider the next time it needs relayed. Like you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds to relay the pitch. And they're going, is it worth going back to grass and trying grass again with the advancements in some of the technology around how grass pitches are now laid and maintained? If we get it right, would it be better? So I think that certainly from our perspective, ironically, it may be an advantage soon to have a grass pitch because so many people will be used to playing on a 3 or 4G pitch. It's still up for discussion. It was mentioned at the AGM. I think for the first time ever, I heard Gary speak not favourably about it, but certainly he didn't write it off straight away. How's that?
Newry City, of course, they are starting to talk about the idea. They're not in full control of their ground. They're talking about the idea of getting a grass pitch somewhere. And you look at the teams still left in the league. Ballymena talked about it earlier on. Well, again, that's another council facility, but there was talk that perhaps with all that drama at the start of the year, I believe it was in 2022, that the council were thinking of changing things up. Of course, that's a ground surrounded by lots of other 3G pitches. I don't know if Carrick is ever going to be able to do it, just the way their ground's set up.
They tried a couple of years ago. I think it was around 2016, 17, something like that, if memory serves me right. And they actually ended up at the end of the season having a big motocross event on it to tear the pitch up, because they needed to get the pitch ripped up so it was easier to do that.
Yes.
And when they realised that, when they went into it and the people came in to do the pitch, they realised that they had a massive drop from one end to the other. And the cost to even that out would have more than offset the profit and all that was coming in. So they ended up not being able to do it. And they ended up, their training facility behind Taylor's Avenue is now what they use the ground for. Yeah, so that was what happened there. I don't think they'll ever be able to do it at Taylor's Avenue.
Newry right now has a very tough looking pitch. I'm sure they would probably be keen to have one. If they're never going to go for it. Glentoran have talked about it, but then we don't know what the story is with Glentoran. They could be playing on the moon by the end of the season if Alipoor has a notion to, and then, well, Portadown, they've got the flamethrower. Who needs a plastic pitch here then?
Again, they have a similar problem to Carrick. Their pitch is quite sloped on about cost quite a bit.
You can really see it from one end if you're looking at it from the camera point of view, as in what the broadcasters, but you can see from the left hand side, and you can obviously just look across the dip towards the away end. You can physically see the difference, and it's a weird slope
in the amount of steps.
Yeah.
If you look at the main grandstand, you'll see the rectory end. There's one step. At the Brownstown Road end, there's about 6 or 7.
Oh, well, there's a big mound of dirt that's been sitting there for well over a decade, and this white elephant of a stand opposite the current home stand. So whatever happens there. Final question on this. I can't believe we've got a Glenavon man spending minutes talking about 3G pitches. Do you think the argument around the integrity of football, do you believe that's somewhat past and we've all calmed down? Now it's all we have to focus on costs and revenue streams rather than it ain't football unless you're kicking a big bit of turf as you hack down a player?
Well, there are certainly a few Irish League centre halves and tough tackling midfielders over the years would agree with that statement. I think, as with anything, certainly the part-time teams probably have to protect their revenue streams a bit more than maybe some of the bigger clubs that have those larger funding streams, shall we say. I think that's something that when Crusaders were effectively saved by their fans stepping in, what's that now, 15, 16 more years
Easy.
ago,
Yeah.
when Stephen Baxter came in as manager, and they changed their ownership model and went for the pitch. That was something that they really highlighted as a revenue stream, and that's helped them to be the semi-professional, three-quarter professional, whatever. The fact that they've been able to be successful, win a couple of titles, push other teams quite far in league and top, that's mainly come from you've got to be able to pay your players. You've got to be able to be solvent as a club, and we've seen other clubs there try to do it other ways, and there is a wee bit of a split coming. Both top 4 or 5 clubs, Cliftonville are managing to do it and push those full-time teams. And teams like Ballymena and Glenavon, even Coleraine to a certain extent, I know they've been on a good run of form recently. Those sort of clubs are really starting to suffer because those other teams are now starting to attract the better talent. So to answer your question, I think it has to come down to the commerciality, if that's a word, because if you can't afford to run your club, then you can't afford to be in the league. And if you can't do that, then you can't compete. That's kind of where I think things are. So the problem is, though, as I said before, there are so many teams now. Like we have our neighbours at Lurgan Town have a couple of 3G pitches. Lurgan Junior High School has a 3G pitch. In Portadown, there's 4 or 5 of them. In the whole of the Craigavon area, there's loads. Would it actually mean that we would get an increased revenue stream from having loads of clubs training on that or playing on it? I'm not sure.
You've articulated a very strong point here, because when sometimes fans say to these clubs, we need to get involved in this, we need to start offering this service to the community, that they're going to come in here and use this pitch. Actually, other teams, other organizations have kind of saw, well, we're just going to go for that already. And you're right, there is plenty of pitches around those areas. Are they going to flood? Why are they going to flood the Mournview Park to host, or maybe hosting something, as you say, like a charity thing, or a couple of boys who want to have a fancy Sunday morning, with the 4-11 side game.
Stag do maybe?
Yeah, well, that's it. I've played on Seaview for some random game against another 5-a-side, so I get it, but how many other pitches can you do that for? So, really strong point, and as well as that, you touch upon something that I discussed with Keith Bailey a number of months ago on this podcast, and it's this idea of the divide and how the teams just below the full-time teams are going to react with such a big pot at the end of the rainbow that is the European competitions. And clearly Glenavon have tasted that over the past decade or so, and now things are changing. And do you see now perhaps it's going to have to make teams just below those full-time teams, it's going to force them to either adapt to survive. It's going to make them be a bit more Moneyball's the thing that people threw out from that movie. And do you sometimes look a wee bit to the history of the Gary Hamilton era and think, now if Glenavon had the likes of Bobby Burns, Sykes, Cooper, Reece Marshall coming through, you're thinking they're not, you're sailing them on a little boat going, good luck, all the best, thanks for playing for us. Now be like, yearly bonus, you're worth 100 grand. It works two ways, where it's almost like you're going to have to become a selling club, but maybe that focuses how you build a team a bit differently, rather than maybe a Glentoran or Linfield going, we need to get a Brad Lyons right now who can make things happen and win this league. You guys are like, our future is being built on hoping that Isaac Bird is going to be worth 6 figures in 3-4 years.
That would be nice. You mentioned a few names there, and at one point I remember interviewing Gary, and I think he did it with the BBC as well, where he went through an entire 1-11 of players that are either currently playing in the Irish League or whatever have been at Glenavon and either gone on to win the league with other teams or certainly compete at the higher level or get moved across the water. You mentioned Sykes. Joel Cooper went to America, went to England, came back. Bobby Burns, the same. Reece tried down south, didn't quite work out for him. Robbie McDaid started off at Glenavon, went to Leeds, didn't quite work out for him there. Shane Lavery again, Lurgan boy. James Singleton. There's players there. Daniel Larmer has gone on.
Like what an Irish League team now.
Yeah, 100%.
For all intents and purposes, There's a reason for this. It was all a part of the development. There's genuinely some young fans in this league who don't remember a time when there wasn't transfer fees. There was a time this league was just not a transfer fee league at all.
I just remember that growing up with stories of Glenn Ferguson obviously going to Linfield for 55 grand, and obviously that was a huge amount at that stage for an Irish League player. I mean, we've as Glenavon fans, we've always had, and they say it's the hope that kills you, but we've always had some sort of hope that with one or two players we could compete consistently. I think our biggest chance was that sort of mid-90s team or early mid-90s team with trio of McCoy, Ferguson and McBride. And even right now, we're sitting thinking we shouldn't have to rely on a 38-year-old Owen Bradley to lead our line. Yes, he's a good player and has been a great player in the Irish League. He was a find when he first came into the Irish League at Coleraine, and we were very lucky to get him. Are those players that are going to get you 20 goals a season? Unfortunately not. We played Crusaders there, ran them close. We're 2-1 up with half an hour to go, and you look over to the far side and they're bringing Adam Leckie and Johnny McMurray and Jude Winchester on. And within 10 minutes, Adam Leckie had scored one and made one. And all of a sudden, Crusaders were 3-2 up and coasted at the end of the game. We were shell-shocked. We don't have that quality to bring off our bench. Yes, we probably have a decent 1-13, 1-14. But after that, yes, we've signed a couple of guys from Loughgall and Peter Campbell and Conor Kerr over the last couple of seasons, who Conor's taken a wee while to get used to the top league, but has certainly looked more accomplished recently. Peter Campbell hit the ground running. And I think he's probably suffering a wee bit from the success of signing Micheál Glynn on loan from Derry. Peter's been shoved out to the right. Yes, he wears number 10, but he's not quite Arjen Robben coming in from that side. Peter likes to be on the left. He likes to get the ball across or cut inside and play a couple of tricky 1-2s. And then he scored against Portadown last year, the way he took that goal. Our main problem, I think, is we're always a wee bit short. But again, that comes down to we probably haven't got the budget to be able to go and sign a 20-goal a season striker.
Well, right now, that says to me that in this era, and it may be a bubble, let's be clear, this era of the full-time teams and transfer fees being paid out, and here's Kofi Balmer over at Crystal Palace. Those players I mentioned, maybe some of them was 5-6 years ago, where it was a handshake and a memory album goodbye. Yeah, it was like, all the best, mate. It's great to have you. Thanks for helping us. That's not happening now. And you even look at your business this year. Goalkeeper Rory Brown, 5-year deal. Isaac Bird, 5-year deal. You're committing to these players.
4 players last year signed 4-year deals. We would have been signing
You've got to commit. It's gambling in a way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's probably...
But it's gambling because you have to, because if you wait 2 years, then
it probably is.
Someone's going to have a go at it, and it's you've got to commit to these players saying, we're here for you, but also you've got to protect yourself and go, well, you are signing these deals because you want to have them for such an extended period of time. Like the reason why Lee Bonus went for 100 grand is because Portadown had him for another 3.5 years or something. Like they could have sat.
He had just signed a 5-year contract.
Yeah, so they were happy to sit on it. A team, and not just yourselves, lots of teams will likely do this. If they see a player they like, particularly if they're young and they have potential, it's going to be about committing to them. Because if someone's going to look at them, it's the world now where give us the cash. And I don't think we're that far away from a player in the Championship somehow getting 5 figures. I would not be surprised if a team goes, Nathaniel Ferris, X amount of money. As an example.
Nathaniel's a good player. But yeah, he's a good example. And there's a few others, certainly that Anna team last season that very nearly got promoted. They have a couple of good players. Lee Upton obviously got to move to Portadown out of it. There's certainly also Craig Taylor, their left winger, another excellent player. I know that we had spoken to a number of players who are squad players, shall we say, from some of the bigger teams, and you go to them and you used to be able to get them for argument's sake a couple of £100 a week. We'll not put an exact figure on it, but now before they'll even meet you, they'll say, I want at least £500 a week or more than that, or even slightly less than that. But you're talking, they're looking as a minimum what some of our better players are getting with their add-ons, their bonuses for appearances and goals and clean sheets and all that. And then it gives the manager a bit of a headache because you go, is this player, am I signing this player to hang my hat on this player? Is he going to be the difference maker in my team? Is he going to be our star standout player, or is he going to be a bit better than what we've got and push the team forward a bit? Do I risk my team harmony by paying this guy who maybe is just a bit better than the guys who have been in form in my team more money? Do I pay him more money and risk the harmony, or do I basically blow my budget for players on this one player, or can I go and get 2 or 3 players for the same amount?
Well, you've given me a really good example there with Craig Taylor. It's somewhat those teams at the top of the championship, or they want to push on, they want to get out of the league, and they want to get into the top tier. There's Craig Taylor. I agree, one of the best players in the championship. He signed a 3-year deal this summer. That is
it's a big commitment for a championship
team, because they're ready to commit to their best players. He's happy to stay there if they are willing to support him. And it's saying to those clubs, you can't just, the lead up to moving from Anana to a top team, that would have been the regular situation, wouldn't it? You'd see the championship teams, if you don't get it, it didn't work out. Oh, well, it's time for 5 you boys to go up because you've proven it and you've been sniffed around, sure, in the top team. You're not going to see that as much. Like Portadown, looking at that at Dundela, it might be a different situation, but Loughgall and Anna and other teams like that, Warren Point pretty much kept most of their squad. It's not the same where it can be picked at, and it's just the changing of the league right now, and it's going to be fascinating because we haven't really seen it all settle, how it's going to lay, how our team's going to work with each other, what's the situation going to be in regards to, because Portadown had that big exodus and then brought a lot of players in, it didn't work. Glenavon were getting a bit of criticism from some quarters because they weren't bringing in these names. But in turn, when you see a lot of the youth that come through Glenavon, the real bedrock, and you can see it's a part of the success of Carrick this year, is experience. Just because you're 32 does not mean you can't run the length of yourself. In fact, it often means that you're probably more focused on your fitness and you're an even better player than you were at 27. We're just not that league where people are falling off the edge anymore,
There's certainly a lot of that. When I heard that Curtis Allen was leaving Coleraine, I was like, we need to be in for him because I think he's a sort of player that we're missing. We have a lot of good, honest, hard-working players, but when it comes to flair, it's probably where we fall down a little bit. Ballymena, another team that we've been competing with consistently over the last 10 years. Coleraine as well, to a certain extent. Those teams are competitive, but where the 3 of us were competing consistently towards the top of the league and really disrupting the Belfast teams, one of the teams might do it. Coleraine have done it a couple of times. Ballymena did it a couple of times. A couple of seasons ago, we did it a few times. But now we're sort of fighting for that 5th, 6th place, or maybe if we're a bit unlucky, let's consolidate 7th so we get a chance at the playoffs, maybe have a cup run. Is that the way the Irish League's going? Hopefully, as you say, it doesn't settle like that for the rest of us. But our main sponsors like Glenavon or Bedeck, they've been there, whether it was Broomhill originally or Bedeck, for 25 years over a couple of different spells as our main sponsor, and they put a lot of money into our club, and we're really happy with that. For Ballymena, it was McBurney's for a long time. It's now Right Bus. There's a lot of it around that, and it is about making your club financially attractive. How do we make NIFL commercially attractive to sponsors? I know people have talked about the Summer League and the All-Ireland League, and that's been talked about and all of that. I think that's more pressure from the League of Ireland looking at their current financial state and going, oh dear, we might need to do something here. I think the Irish League is in a much better position than it's ever been in.
Something a wee bit different to start the podcast, a rabbit hole which I very much enjoyed diving in with yourself, but sometimes I've said this sentence 2 minutes into the podcast. It's definitely not 2 minutes this week. We go to the games. There was only 4 of them because of weather and because of, well, Linfield going having their fancy time away in Scotland. But do you know how the cards are falling for Linfield? Do you know how it's a good week for the Blues? It's when they don't even play and they somehow shoot up a place into 2nd in this league. That's all thanks to a 4th great result from Coleraine in a row. Easily the league's informed team right now. They had to do it again on Friday night against Crusaders, they had to do it without Shevlin, without Lee Lynch, but they showed that they have a bounty of riches across that front line right now. Your boys saw what these guys had to offer. They weren't able to penetrate your back line, but the key thing is that neither were you. You didn't get past their defenders either. A incredible number of clean sheets. That's like the 8th in like 10 games they've got. They were due a win against Crusaders like that. And right now, after a bumpy start to the season, Coleraine are starting to string these results together.
Sort of what we're talking about the teams pushing those full-time or higher up clubs. I think Coleraine have probably been the most consistent over the last number of seasons at that, and they're starting to put together a good run. The Crusaders have a number of injuries, and their squad depth, as I said earlier, is actually being really tested at the minute. Coleraine didn't really look too troubled. And I suppose we were actually very disappointed a couple of weeks ago that we didn't beat them. We had enough chances to win, as Gary said, I think 7 games or something. The problem that they had at the start of the season was they were shipping goals. We went there and turned them over. I don't know how, but we seem to be, as our guys have said, a bit of a bogey team for them. But that was definitely a blip. Over the last number of games, they are very, very consistent.
For sure, I saw them against Dungannon, and they had a front line of Shevlin, Lynch and McKendry somewhat played off from that day. They had a big 120 minutes in the cup midweek, so they're able to swap things out. They're able to pretty much get a new set of furniture up there. Evan McLaughlin, who was so sharp at the start of the season, he was playing with McCrudden, and then that Glacken back. That's so impressive. The one thing I really like about Coleraine is how dynamic they are midfield. They keep going, passing and moving, and unfortunately for Crusaders, their strength has really been trying to shut down games and play it their way, and right now, they are just finding it so tough. After coming on against Linfield, Cadell started this game, and talk about the bench right now. Some of the players that they brought in, Ebe's not really. That was a big player to bring in. He hasn't found his footing in this team right now. McMurray was in the team for a while. He's not been able to hold down his place. Hitley is back. You know, you look at it 1 to 11 and go, okay, this seems fairly strong, maybe a few holes here or there, but they've just played so much football. They play so intense. And yes, only a few weeks ago, they were able to go up to Coleraine and push them over. But you look on that bench and there's names that you'd be like, I don't think I've heard of that player before. And they're
having to go into the academy players.
Pretty much. And you're going to find it tough when there's so many competitive games. It feels like you're either against the bottom 6 side or against the top 6 side. And every time these top 6 teams meet, it's going to be competitive, and it's going to be it's inches, not yards. And there's a free kick early on. Tuffy needs to parry it, and then it's an easy knock-in by Jarvis. But Coleraine stood tall. When Crusaders get at you, it's about them running at you in the box and making
they overwhelm you.
They do, and they make you commit defenders. But Coleraine stood up to that, and you'll see a lot of the chances were from out wide. And you know when Crusaders are having to do these pot shots from far out, they're not having a good day. Lecky is doing a bit of an Owens-esque, picking the ball out of the air and trying to find either a Heatley or a Ross Clark either side of him, but it just wasn't working. I don't really think it was a bad day at the office for Crusaders. I just think Coleraine have a real fine run of form in them. They've got the confidence, and they'll want now to keep this going. They'll take Tuesday night games right now because they're able to rotate and it still works.
Yeah, they have a lot of like-for-like replacements in those areas. But I do feel that Crusaders, certainly in the next few weeks, if they don't get their bigger players back from injury and that, they might fall away a little bit. And you could see the likes of Coleraine and Cliftonville really cementing their place in that sort of top 4 or 5 teams, and Crusaders sort of falling away. Now, they did it last season and managed to recover towards the end of the season, but I think they're possibly the one that has the least chance of really pushing for a top 2-3 space this season.
it just seems whenever they get going, something throws them off course. Clearly, their strength is at home, and sometimes in the Irish League, I often think we can get caught up. Yes, I know it's a squad game more than ever, but these are built, seasons are built, big campaigns are built on the big games, and 1 to 11, I think Crusaders have more game changers than other teams, definitely more game changers than Glentoran. And I can see when oftentimes this top six, which is so close this year right now, it's sometimes whoever can get the best against each other. But right now it feels like it's now the top six like a circle. It's Crusaders is able to beat this team, and then Coleraine can beat Crusaders, but then Glentoran can beat Coleraine, and then Linfield can beat Glentoran. And Lord's in the middle of it all there, and it's gonna shake out to be a fantastic end to this season. But we go from two teams who have a great home record to a supporter base who haven't seen a home win in 9 months or so. Portadown, they won 1 game on the pitch on Sunday, and now they've won 2 games on the pitch in the space of 7 days. Who would have thought it? And of course, there's a big asterisk there, because I'm going to have to say on the pitch, because as soon as they got the points, they are now gone for now. We talked about this briefly last week. NIFL Competitions Committee have made their ruling. They released it on Friday evening, just a day before the game. Their Competitions Committee have adjudged that Portadown have breached Premiership Rule 20H, which stated is, should any nominated player or substitute sustain a injury or become otherwise incapacitated after the submission of the team sheet to the referee before kickoff, he may be replaced provided that the referee and the opposing club are informed prior to kickoff. The NIFL Competitions Committee deemed, this is in a quote, deemed that Alberto Balde was ineligible as he was not incapacitated when the team sheet was charged. That is a quote from Keith Bailey's Belfast Telegraph article. Because my big question was, I read it and I went, okay, what was the decision here all about? Was it because Alberto Balde was not considered incapacitated? Was it because Newry and the referee weren't made aware? Or was it because he was incapacitated for the team sheet, he then should not have been substituted on? I don't have the answer to that. We haven't been told by the NIFL Competitions Committee of what part of that rule has been breached. Portadown aren't commenting. The only thing they say is that they are going to appeal it. Wow, oh wow, Dave. We'll get on to the game against Ballymena in a second. I'm obviously talking about the decision to remove their 3 points from their 3-1 win against Newry last Sunday. It's never boring in Shamrock Park, is it?
No, from what I understand, it basically boils down to the fact that he turned up late, and then they suddenly realised, oh, he's not here, we'll have to replace him. And then he turned up, and it all comes down to your interpretation of the term incapacitated. What makes a player incapacitated?
That's one thing. This isn't just you were suspended and you played, which was the crux of the Joe Crow issue with Glentoran in the Irish Cup earlier on this year. What does incapacitated mean? And is this potentially too broad, too malleable for this to stick? Because Portadown really believe, they're being quite bullish, they believe this is going to be, well, or at least they're fighting for it to be overturned. I have no clue. I've never been a part of this process. But it feels quite broad. But again, you can tell me one thing and I'll believe you, and you can suggest the other side. I'm like, yeah, I can kind of, I'm seeing it from both sides in a way. I can't make a call.
It is very open. I suppose, unfortunately, a lot of the laws of football are very much, as we know, with the offside rule and all of that. That's very much up the interpretation. I know VAR have tried to, with that, they've tried to make it a bit more black and white, and I think to a certain extent that has happened. But we'll not talk about that. Go back to sort of the Portadown ruling and the incapacity. I think it really boils down to that, and to me, the one grey area with that is it doesn't actually say that the player has to be permanently incapacitated. From a footballing perspective, It's unfortunate, but I don't think they should have taken the
Well,
chance. I think
that's what the questions are, because someone would read it that as soon as Alberto Balde was listed on the team sheet and then wasn't technically subbed off on minute zero, did that break it? Do you have any sympathy for Portadown, where potentially they go to the referee and the referee says, yeah, no problem, you can change it? If that was the case, I don't know if that 100% did happen, but if that did happen, do you feel sympathy where it's like we've went to the guy that's supposed to administer the rules or the laws? Sorry, isn't it football? The laws of the game, and then someone says after the game, actually that was wrong.
I mean, I know that we travel to away games with a couple of extra players that, we don't just always travel with the 17 or 18 that are going to be there. There's always extra players there. So surely they could have gone, let's not take a chance. And you know what, if he turns up, he turns up. He's sitting in the stand with the rest of the guys that aren't playing.
Dave, do you bring your boots as well, just in case? Here, guy, mate, I've got them. Like, I know those boys are late, but like, I'm here. Like,
There'd be a few boys above me in the pecking order.
Well,
I'll say that.
as we wait for that to be decided, right now the decision is that Newry have got a 3-0 win there, but Portadown were able to do it again. They beat Ballymena 1-0 at Shamrock Park, a pitch which needed a bit of extra hot love and care to make the game go ahead. And
I'm not sure there was much grass left in those goal mouths.
I know it was the goal mouse that got all the attention, not the full pitch. But I saw this game, and I think we talk about it, styles making fights. I think the way Portadown are set up are somewhat of a bad match for Ballymena. Ballymena kept pumping balls high. They couldn't get through the midfield. And look, these are two teams that play three at the back. They play this Larne. I know Larne didn't invent this formation, but if you might be more familiar with Larne, they play a very Larne-esque formation with the high wing backs and the two up top, and it's some sort of triangle in midfield. And in the end, it was just the one goal from Josh Archer, made completely by Jordan Jenkins in the box, that divided this team. But Portadown hung on. They were under siege for most of the second half. They had to battle away. Niall Curry was delighted. For Ballymena, you'll be a wee bit busted after getting all these great results to go to the bottom team. You'll just think, why can we do it against the top teams but not the bottom ones? It's just very, very frustrating, I imagine.
Yeah, and I can share the frustration because unfortunately at Glenavon we did exactly the same thing. We compete against the top 6 teams, and then the teams around us we're competitive with most of the time, and then the lower teams we don't seem to be able to deal with them. But now Curry teams are always honest, hardworking, and determined to get a positive outcome for them, whether that's a point or 3 points as it was on Saturday. Like Ballymena play decent football, have done for a number of seasons. But unfortunately, when you have that kind of intense combative style you're playing against, it's difficult. Portadown, moment of inspiration from Jordan Jenkins. He has that in his locker. Had a lot of potential. Hasn't really kicked on and realised that. He was a bit more effective last week against Newry. He's become more and more into it under Niall Curry. Now seems to be able to get the best out of him. Niall is that sort of a manager. He's an arm around the shoulder and said, "You're my man. Go and do it for me." I suppose in the similar style to David Jeffrey would be as well at times. And Gary has done that too.
I can see the comparison exactly those two managers. At halftime, Niall Curry was beating the chest. I mean, they got a standing ovation. I think that Shamrock Park fan base has just been zapped. I don't know the last time they can remember being one goal ahead at the break. But I look at that Portadown team and I see it. Like, they've got 2 wins in a week. That looks great. And they're going to have, lots of big tougher tests like this Saturday, but I see Shamrock Park being a real key area for them. Yes, they haven't won in 9 months there, but the way this team's set up, the shape of the team, the way it's built, a lot of youth, I think that big, wide pitch is going to benefit them a lot to be able to chase into the space. Like, it is so Larne-esque. Jordan Jenkins is that lead bonus, running on the line, chasing into the channels, trying to pick up a ball and find somebody in midfield. Out wide, they're 2 young, inexperienced players, Kaka on the right and Reece Jordan on the left, and They are able to push up forward really, really high. You've been able to see that with Reece Jordan. He's had a few penalty shouts over the past few weeks. He's getting into the box like Ben Doherty does for Larne. And we talked about all those great players for Glenavon. And look, you have Isaac Bird from Portadown, who didn't get playing for them, but could become a great player in this league. I look at it, and it's early days yet, but he's been at the centre of a lot of drama this week. Alberto Balde has all the skills and ability and potential to be, and this is massively hyperbolic, he does have the potential to be the best player in the league. I saw glimpses of him dribbling and passing and fighting and getting the ball. I was like, who is this player? And Reece Jordan on the left, 17 years old. I can almost guarantee you he is going to be one of the best wing backs in the league. Will it be for Portadown? Probably not. But if there's players that I saw and think there's massive potential there, it was down that left-hand side where they were doing bits. And for Ballymena, it just they they struggled because when Portadown go ahead, they have to push forward, and that just helped Portadown to go in the break. And it was just the alchemy of that team. Look, I think Ross Redmond suits that Thomas Cosgrove style wing back very well, where you get across the halfway line and then you whip it into the box. McDade's a revelation for them, but when the ball isn't bouncing, I don't see that they have this type of player who can pick it up between the lines. A number 10 that's going to...
They're really missing Leroy Miller.
Yeah. They don't have, like, Balde was that for Portadown a bit, and it's like their other midfielders seems to be quite like enforcers. They're stopping players and playing out wide. Ballymena don't have that. They don't have that kind of centre number 10 player who is going to feed a Gibson or a McDade. That's why they almost had to do it themselves. They had to get the ball and try and find somebody else.
Jordan Gibson is a player that we've looked at a number of times. He again, probably one of those players who's not an out-and-out 9, not quite a 10. He's not an 8 in midfield. He can play a number of different positions in those attacking areas. And I think probably from that, he suffers a little bit of... we need to play him because he's a good player, but do we play him through the middle up top and risk him getting crowded out by a bigger, stronger centre half? Or do we play him deeper in midfield and risk him not being able to impact the game up top? I think, personally, if it was me, I'd probably play him in there in that 10. And he seems to be able to pick up those balls on the edge of the box. He's scored some cracking goals from just doing just that.
We go to a game from his former team, Carrick Rangers. I don't know if you would describe them as walking wounded. They were walking sniffled, as Stuart King bemoaned how he had so few players due to illness and some due to injury. They took on Dungannon Swifts, and you guys at Glenavon, you fell to the sword of Dungannon. It feels like they just want to keep Portadown. 3 points, that's it. That's all we need to keep you there. We're going to start winning. As soon as you start winning, we're going to start winning. But we've talked a lot in this podcast about Reece Campbell, quite nippy, nice little player, got a bit of speed, got a bit of pace, can find places in the box. It's taken a while, but the other side of that looks like it's Mark Walsh. He got a goal. I was very impressed with him when he played against Coleraine, and they're starting to get results. Yes, there was a red card in the middle of it all, but what was it when you saw Dungannon defeat Glenavon? What were the sparks that you thought could ignite into some decent form for them?
I think what really impressed me was actually they were quite solid at the back as well. And that's something that teams at the bottom of the league don't tend to have. Like they've shipped a number of goals this season. We beat them 5 earlier on in the season. Dean obviously got them in and said, right, we need to be a bit more compact here. We're fine going forward, but there's no point in us going and having to beat the teams 4-3 when obviously like Saturday we can beat them 4-1. I think it wasn't a typical Carrick Rangers performance or team. As you say, players were sick under the weather. The game probably was a 4-1 game. You know, that won't necessarily happen every time those teams play. I think they're much closer in standards than that. Dean Shields has a really good style of play, as you've mentioned before. Sturdy King, there's a reason why he's in that job. He took Banbridge Town from where they were to pushing it into the championship, but he really has taken Carrick Rangers and made them into a really good side, really good squad. And obviously, as I mentioned, Curtis Allen there helps that up front. I think they suffer from what most of the clubs at that end of the league suffer from, and that's being really decent footballing teams with no cutting edge up front. They've had a number of good strikers. I was thinking about this earlier. They had Daniel Hughes, who lit the league up with 1 point. They lost Paul McElroy, who went to Ballymena. They've had a number of good centre forwards who have been able to, get a few goals. And they've got Joe McCready there at the minute, who was on fire for Institute a couple of seasons ago under Paddy McLaughlin.
Yeah, they're dying to try and get a Curtis Allen. That's the gamble they're going for. They're either going to pick somebody up from lower in the league and they'll want to try and create this different position, try and pick up a Peter Campbell or a Lee Bonus, and all of a sudden they're the big striker for them. Or they're hoping a player drops down from one of the big teams and becomes this real keystone of the team like Allen. But the game has really changed because Dungannon got a penalty first. I did not think that was a penalty at all.
I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it was a penalty. Unfortunately, there was a bit of contact in the box, but I would not say that it was a foul. There was contact, not a foul for me. And then I believe it's 2-1 at the point where Emmett McGuckin goes for the ball. He's on the ground, and if people have seen it, while on the ground, he tries to swing his left boot across to block the ball being hit away by Gerardo Bruna. And Gerardo Bruna then is hit, or he gets contact from that boot. He gets red carded for, lashing out or violent conduct, something along those lines. Again, for me, do not think that is a red card. I do not think that was violent. Stuart King talked about how that is a decision he did not need to give the referee, but he's fighting for the ball, tries to block it while he's on the ground. He does have contact with the player, but I don't know if it's a straight red card type of contact.
Could go in another rabbit hole, but will not. But I think sometimes in those scenarios, a referee has to decide, and this is probably where the argument comes from. Has a referee played at a relatively high level to understand the different types of contact and whether a player means to make contact, or whether it's a cynical foul, or whether it's a genuine attempt to play the ball? In my personal opinion, I think that if you're making a genuine attempt to play the ball, that should not, and you don't do it, I don't think that should receive the same punishment as somebody who deliberately takes a player out.
His only intention was to get the ball. You can clearly see that. It would be, he had to extend so far out even just to clip him. But yes, again, not that intent is 9/10 of what the decision being made here. There's a variety of things, but yes, hard done by Stuart King. I probably say, yeah, I get it. A team who is feeling the early season buzz starting to fade away, sadly, for Newry City. They lose 2-0 against Larne, and I've talked in this podcast a few weeks ago about some of the teams at the bottom of the league and how not being able to defend set pieces are sometimes a big factor when it comes to being lower in the league. Newry, they concede 2 goals from corner kicks. That's after conceding a goal from a corner kick against Portadown on the Sunday. These are frustrating errors, I'm sure, if you're a Newry City fan, but in all fairness, going into NIFL Park, I doubt they were expecting much more, but to concede those goals in the way they did is frustrating, because that's the type of things you think we could eradicate. That if we can stop the set piece goals, then we have a chance. And if they did, they probably would have been in with a chance.
Yeah, Larne are one of those teams that have a really high intensity. They do that kind of high press very well. You don't get a lot of time on the ball. If you're in Newry City, who again like to play good football, if the quality of player that's pressing you is higher than the quality of player that's trying to play football, mistakes are going to be made, and you're going to end up not as much in the game as you would have hoped. Like, I mean, 2-0 defeat at Inver when you were in the game a little bit with a few chances. But Larne are a different kettle of fish at home. We played them at Mourneview a couple of times, and they've looked ordinary. But then anytime we go to, I know that sounds a bit strange saying that the league leaders look ordinary, but we probably could have beaten them last week had we had a wee bit of luck. And I think, as you said, that those are the sort of games that league champions that they maybe weren't in that much can go and get a win. I think that Larne are certainly have that potential. Newry, on the other side, their own league position certainly doesn't really unfortunately lie too much, that they're a team that are good at good playing football, but again lack that cutting edge up front. I say that as a supporter of the team that they've had their biggest win against.
For now,
but I think that
for them it'll just be about those results against the teams around them. How will they fare against Dungannon and Portadown? They've got plenty of those games to hopefully get results for them from their point of view, and not mess it up. Big word for, I loved the volley from Cosgrove, but they rode their luck. I think Lauren were well worth their win there. Before we get into all the fun activities that will hopefully, fingers crossed, be played on some grass pitches potentially this weekend, but the way the weather's been so far, it is Baltic. We will talk about a little Christmas present that was delivered. Look, we all expected it. Mummy and Daddy left a few little hints. We kind of knew it was the one thing we all wanted, and guess what? They delivered nice and early. Michael O'Neill is back as Northern Ireland manager. He's done a Niall Curry. He's here, and he is back managing Northern Ireland. He's been given a 5-year deal, pretty much. The idea being he is locked and loaded, signed, sealed, and delivered for this big Euro 2028 super host, which we all hope Northern Ireland will be a part of for Euro 2028. Outside of that, for yourself, Dave, was he everything you wanted and more as a Northern Ireland fan?
He certainly gave us hope. The fact that we went to our first major championship in however many years it was, he'll always be a legend. I think there's actually a fair bit of risk on his part. I know obviously it didn't work out with Inverclough for different reasons, but it's always hard to follow somebody who's had success. Certainly Nigel Worthington, when he succeeded Laurie Sanchez, found it difficult. I think actually if Laurie Sanchez had stayed on, most people believe that we would have qualified for the World Cup, but that's a long time ago in another conversation probably. But Michael O'Neill, I think he's been the best manager we've had for a very long time. Didn't work out for him at Stoke. I think he just seems to be suited to international football. He understands how to get the best out of players in a short period of time that he has with them. And I think that out of the potential names that were sort of thrown around, I think he's probably the best we could have got. I know obviously Neil Lennon was a very strong candidate.
Are you telling me you weren't on the Robbie Fowler bus then? No.
I think if I'd been given a ticket, I would have given it away for that bus.
Well, for Michael O'Neill coming back, he currently sits on 72 games he has managed. It's pretty much nailed on, particularly if he sees out this entire contract, but there's no guarantee he absolutely will. He will surpass Billy Bingham as managing the most Northern Ireland games. Billy Bingham did 98. So, big job ahead of him. I'm most surprised by the fact that he has signed this long-term deal, because what I've talked about and what I prophesized was that perhaps he comes in, does a great job, he gets to the next Euros, or he doesn't really matter. It was a roll of the dice that was only going to last a year. Like the way this qualification process is going to be done, it's pretty much going to be done within the space of, what is it, maybe 8 months, 6 months perhaps. It's going to be one and done, and maybe you would go, Amir, it worked out, it didn't, and then we'll see what happens. But actually, he wants to grow it. He's talked about how he wants to start looking up the big book of footballers with Irish grannies. He wants to start reading that book and find out who he can snatch. He wants to have the best players possible. I guess a part of that club manager in him will think, how can I transfer players over to me? Let's get a Jack Grealish and make him stay. It's a project. I'm excited about it. Should you ever go back? Why not? But it's a big task.
I think of all the possible outcomes for a group, for the qualification, it's been relatively kind. I mean, Denmark didn't exactly set the world on fire in the World Cup there.
Denmark are rubbish now. It's easy.
Yeah.
Officially, it's over.
That's it. Go to Copenhagen and turn them over and make Kasper Schmeichel look like a shadow of his former self, and then make then just tie Christian Eriksen up so he has no impact on the game. But I mean, Denmark, Finland, Kazakhstan, San Marino, Slovenia.
And the one thing about Michael O'Neill, the one thing I'll remember about his reign, yes, there was some of the big famous victories against the big sides. I know Greece isn't a big side, but there was big victories, Greece, Ukraine, all the rest. But what Michael O'Neill was brilliant at was just beating the Kazakhstans. Like, he just beat the teams that you needed to dispatch. The amount of times Northern Ireland would get a big result against Spain and then mess it up against Montenegro or something else. I don't know. He was good at just, we deserve to win this game and we're going to beat Estonia. We're going to beat whoever it is. So can he do that with a team that's been all over the place? I don't know. But it hopefully secures Stephen Davis for at least another year, Johnny Evans for another year, and there is young quality coming through here from Ballard to even Try Hume and a few other ones. Sprinkle in a couple of those Northern Irish Belfast grannies. They could be cooking on gas, sir.
We could. We were very much gung-ho, let's go out and give it a go sort of thing. But I brought a degree of organisation to the team that I don't think we had it for a long time. Calmness. I think Stephen Davis enjoyed the best years of his career under Michael O'Neill. Kyle Lafferty, again, sort of all over the place. He's still adamant he wants to give it a go. It's only 18 months till the tournament, which is effectively one more season for a lot of these players. And a lot of them are likely to go, you know what, I'll give it one more season. I'll see if we can qualify. If we do, happy days, we're there. I'll probably retire at that point, because a lot of people were scared, one, that Davis would retire straight away after the disappointment there recently, and we've lost our way a little bit under Barcliffe. Would that mean he would just, how to replace him, number two? That's the other question, because he's been so good and so consistent in that midfield. We don't really have anybody straight away who can take over from that. Yes, we've maybe a few potentials, but you don't really have that kind of leadership as well. I mean, do you give the armband to Johnny Evans then from there as well? Not really, because he's only got a couple of years left in his career himself, and he's unfortunately got a few injuries. So I think Michael O'Neill he's at a bit of a crossroads. Yes, those senior players will certainly have a key role to play, and I can't wait to Stuart Dallas comes back, because I think, we have missed him, and I have a number of friends who are raving mad Leeds fans. They're adamant that part of the reason why they haven't been playing as well as they could be is the same thing. Leeds love him. He loves Leeds, but there's that kind of energy, literally run all day. The whole Bielsa ball, as it was when he was there, that fed into Northern Ireland, and the fact that you could play Dallas a goalkeeper, play him in nets, and he would still run the length of the pitch all day long.
Yeah, I'm trying to think his best position for Northern Ireland, and I just on the field is the answer there. Yeah.
So somewhere there.
Somewhere on the pitch. Lots to look forward to. We'll have to see what names fit in, who stick around, who comes in. Lots of questions about who's going to be Northern Ireland's striker or the two up top. Really looking forward to seeing what Michael O'Neill is going to do with it. And according to Beacom in the Sunday Life, he's getting a pretty penny for it. Definitely better to stay in Northern Ireland than the likes of, I don't know, Wigan or Luton or something. But before we go into this weekend's games, it's one of my favourite little tidbits of the year. I call it Irish Cup Day, 7th of January. Was it not the first round again last year? Now it's back to being the 5th round?
Yeah, I think it was the first round proper. I don't know why they did that. I think it was more a COVID thing, because they didn't have too many junior teams actually trying to qualify. But this year it's back to being the 5th round, yeah. It's
the 5th round, aka the 3rd round in FA Cup language. It's really the big first proper round where all the big teams filter through. There isn't any big massive glamour tie. There's no one giant against Uber Minnow. A big props to St Mary's Youth Club who are in there. You also have Tandragee Rovers, is some of the real small lower league teams that are floating about. Tandragee Rovers are going to Bangor. Meanwhile, St Mary's is going to Knockbreda in South Belfast. St Mary's are a Portadown team. Outside of that, like you have Stute, Anna, Dundela, Cliftonville is probably my tie of the round down at Wilger Park. Coleraine, Loughgall is one of those ones as well where you could see an upset just because Loughgall is one of the best teams in the championship. But, Carrick, Ballymena, Ballinamallard, Glenavon, Ballyclare, Dollingstown, Newry against Welders. It's a mixed bag. Maybe the point could mix it up against Linfield, but you also see some strong favourites in Larne against Crumlin, and maybe I guess Newington against Ballymoney isn't one way or the other, but it's always great to see these games anyway.
Yeah, I think Portadown against Banbridge Town's a good, certainly from a Mid Ulster perspective, is a good draw. But as you say, that there's a lot of kind of teams there that you wouldn't be expecting too many upsets. We'll have a good away day at Ballinamallard. It's always a great place to go.
That will be good. And Dungannon will worry against odds, I'd say. But I would feel very confident of these. I could probably give you 10 of them right now. But always a great day. Always a brilliant day for the radio because it's just frenetic of goals firing in from 16 games. I'll probably be queued up at some point. So great one. Enjoy it wherever you are. Get down to the game. It's always nice to see these strange teams. As you said, Portadown against Banbridge Town. What's that going to be like? No idea. But we will look ahead to this weekend, and there's 6 games that are being played for now. Yeah, welcome back, Linfield. Hope you had a little time in Scotland was fun. I know it didn't end that happily for you. You got put out by spot kicks to Kilty Hearts, but you're not getting first billing. It goes to the walking sniffled Carrick Rangers against Glentoran. Glentoran go down to Taylor's Avenue. It's going to be live on the BBC platform. Glentoran have to win this. They're walking wounded themselves. They are missing so many players from the likes of McCartan, McManaman. Is McLean a question mark? Is Wilson a question mark? One of the Donnellys. They don't have a full-time team. They haven't got their full strongest 11 ready to go, but neither do Carrick. Can Carrick score, and can Carrick produce probably the second biggest upset of the season so far, or is this Glentoran's get right game?
I think probably the latter. Carrick at home can sometimes be very much a banana skin for a lot of clubs, but I think with Glentoran having a week off, certainly for some of their players to recoup a little bit, making them maybe a little bit less of a doubt. I think I can't really see past Glentoran. I think they're due. Certainly, we thought if we played them on Saturday, we were in potentially for hiding, more so because we had turned them over and were the first team to beat them in the league this season. But I think that, as I say, with an extra week's rest, with them not necessarily having too much of a strenuous thing, whereas the Carrick players are semi-pro, having to work all week. I can't really see past Glentoran. Maybe 2-1 possibly.
The key thing for Carrick is that Allen is a question mark. Mitchell seems to be out. Clearly, McGuckin's going to be out with the red card, so they may be struggling to find bodies up top. That's a big stretch, even with those players. This is a big game for Glentoran, the likes of maybe a Devlin or a Perkis to pop up and show what they can do. So yeah, you got to favour Glentoran there. Just bad timing for Carrick Rangers to have that game. Ballymena host Larne on a Friday. Usually it's the other way around. Larne are the Friday night boys, but they go up to a Ballymena who's feeling a bit down of themselves, I'm sure, after losing to Portadown. David Jeffrey will get them back up and rolling. Portadown were a bad match for Ballymena. Are Ballymena a bad match for Larne?
It's an Antrim derby. So derbies are always a bit unpredictable. But, I mean, Ballymena have had a couple of good results at home over Larne in the last few seasons. Larne are just grinding out a lot of results. I know they've been unlucky and maybe a wee bit suspect at times. They were my pick at the start of the season for the league. I just thought the only issue that they maybe have is they probably have one of the smallest squads, whether they're dominant possession or on the counter attack. Their intensity, their speed of play, they can be through you in 3 passes, and Lee Bonus is tapping the ball in or squaring it for Leroy Miller. whether Ballymena, because they know how Leroy Miller plays, can keep him quiet, or whether he goes back and unfortunately scores a hat trick or something like that. I'm not sure.
Who's going to have the bigger smile? Is it going to be Miller or McDaid? I look at this and think, big pitch, big grass pitch. Does that suit Lauren right now? They could get caught with the bobble. Ballymena have faced a team in Portadown who have got this pretty much same setup with the three at the back and the wide wing backs. So, tough one. I'm going to be a bit boring, and I'm going to say that's a score draw. I think that's a 1-1. I think they'll struggle to create lots of chances there, and it will be the odd goal here or there.
The weather will have a big say on that one as well. If it's very cold and windy, I think, because obviously the showground is very open. Yeah, I think it's probably a draw's probably right. Larne maybe to shade it.
Newry, it only gets tougher for them, albeit it's down at the showgrounds. Coleraine, the informed team in the league. Which of these incredible front players will play? We don't know. Regardless, I think that's a tidy win for Coleraine. They just look like a dog with a bone. Their eyes are the prize.
They're heading for him at the right time. They're heading for him at the right time. This is the time of year where, because there's so many games so quickly, both league and cup, that you can really define your season. And I think if they continue to remain undefeated between now and say mid-January, they'll have a big say both in league and cup. And as you say, they have good strength in depth. They don't just have lots of players; they have lots of good players that are interchangeable. And I think that, I think even though it's a Friday night and they're pretty much the longest away trip currently in the league, I don't see Newry having too much to worry Coleraine, especially over the last couple of seasons. It's only the pitch, yeah.
It's the pitch could just make it tough for them to try and play those neat passes, whoever it is, Lynch, McKendry, McLaughlin. Is it McCrudden? Is it?
But then they just switch it up and shoot from distance, and Josh Carson will fire one in from 30 yards.
Does it? And that could be the difference. I think it's only going to be the one goal is the difference, but I do think Coleraine might huff and puff for a lot of the game. I think they'll come away with a win. Linfield return to Northern Ireland, back to Windsor Park. Dungannon Swifts will feel like they want to get a run going, but very few teams go into Windsor and get a big result. You came close to shocking them on maybe 2 occasions. Do you feel Dungannon have what it takes to do it, or is that just pitch too big? And I saw actually big lights. Mark McIntosh took a big photograph. They're trying to fix that pitch now, but do you see Dungannon creating a big shock there, or could Linfield return to fine form?
I think the pitch is just too big. And we struggled a wee bit with that. I know we took the lead both times we went down there. It just, Linfield again, they know how to win. They know how to get results from losing positions. And I mean, you make one slip and they're in and they're likely to score. They're that ruthless up front.
I've seen Dungannon being hemmed in this season and they don't like it, and I think that's what Linfield's going to be able to do. They're going to be able to ping the ball around the box. Dungannon oddly should be a team that are fantastic on the break, but they don't have that nerve at the minute to the way that maybe a Peter Campbell would be able to pick the ball on halfway line and magic his way through it. Reece Campbell is maybe the only outlet to do that, but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that on the break, so I think it's tough for them. Maybe they get an early goal. We'll see what happens, but Linfield right now at home, I think they'll be able to work the space and find the goals to get the 3 points.
Far too much quality up there. Vertainen has been a lot better this season than he was on loan last season. Jamie McGrew just seems to be evergreen in the middle of the park. Is he 35 or 15? Who knows? He's just he's honestly seems to be getting better and better with age. And then probably one of my...
Surely he's due a transfer to Glenavon next season, no?
I think that ship might have sailed. What probably one of my favourite players in the last 10 years has been Kirk Miller. I call him Chalky because if you watch him, he very rarely comes in from that 5 yard channel. He's marking the linesman most of the time. And what that does, especially at Windsor, your fullbacks have to then make a decision. Do I stay tight and help my centre half and risk a cross for the likes of the Retainen to get on the end of? Or do I then push out and try to mark or cover the space with those players there and risk the likes of a Fallon or even Mulgrew coming through from midfield?
How will Glenavon approach Crusaders coming in? Who will be playing for Crusaders? Could Glenavon claim they're well rested, or could they be complacent? This is just one of those wild games from an outsider. It is at Mourneview Park. No, hopefully, cars required to get it up and ready to go. Who's going to set that pitch alight? Is it going to be a player in blue and white or black and red?
It's a good question. Micheál Glynn is suspended, so I think we're going to struggle with that one. Obviously, Hockey being injured means we have to reshuffle at the back again. I don't think we've had a settled back four for too many games this season, unfortunately. I think Conor Kerr might come back in. He actually, when he played against Crusaders at Seaview, caused a few problems. So he certainly has that potential. I would like to see Gary trust him in a big game. To be totally honest, I'm not really sure what they expect. Paul Heatley is now back in the team, and he always causes us trouble. He's another one of those type of players, like we said earlier about McDaid and Allen. He's not an orthodox centre forward. He starts way out on the left wing, or he starts way out on the right wing, and then all of a sudden he's at your penalty spot and he's stopping the ball in the corner, or he's picking up a ball on the edge of the box and lashing it in the top corner. If there's going to be a win, I mean, we've only lost games this season by 1 goal, apart from the shambles that was the Newry game. So we've been in every game. I can't see this one being too much different.
This feels a bit like that Ballymena game that you guys had, where it was just frenetic goals. Once it started going in, they wouldn't stop. I think Lecky could be within the goals. I'm going to be kind and say it's potentially a 2-2, 3-3 draw, but I do somewhat fancy maybe Crusaders sneaking this just from the amount of goal talent that they have. Might not be throughout the entire spine of the team, but I think up top they can make a difference. And we wrap it up with Portadown against Cliftonville up at Solitude. Cliftonville themselves having a week off due to Linfield being in Scotland. Portadown are in tip-top fine form with 2 wins on the pitch, but really going to Solitude and getting a win feels like a step too far, really. But you never know. Could catch them on the hoof, perhaps.
Yeah, they could, but while Portadown will be resolute and know they have a job to do, and they're probably a bit more organised and maybe a bit more on the same page than they have been most of the season, I still can't really see past Cliftonville win, especially with Ryan Kerr in the form that he's in, and I fully expect him to go and score a hatful.
I think Portadown could get caught out a wee bit early, and that goal for Cliftonville could unsettle them. Perhaps be one of those dogged displays where they feel great about it being only a 2-0 or a 3-1, perhaps, but I think Cliftonville will burst this little bubble that Portadown are on and take the points, which really they need as they all scrap to get themselves in a position. Larne are officially going to be the top of the table at Christmas. But before I say goodbye to yourself, first off, where can people find things from you online? Are they easy found to hear and see the things you think and the stuff you may say on a more regular basis than the odd appearance on this fine pod?
Yeah, search for Glenavon Media on YouTube. Usually find asking the odd question to Gary, whether it's myself or Michael. Twitter, I'm on there as well at wavy dot, as it's spelled, or as it you think. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'll be. Glenavon Media, sometimes on the Twitter there, Glenavon FC, or on my own.
And final question before we go. I know it's slightly early, but Boxing Day, it's a fantastic tradition in this league. You must think that you had one of your best ever wins last year when you were able to hold on with 9 men. How are you feeling now that the team standing opposite you, they'll be coming into your house, but from being a team that were barely able to score a goal, they've got 2 wins. They were able to sneak a draw against you, which I'm sure is a somewhat of a little mark on your result form so far. Do you go into those games more nervous than enjoying them, or how do you feel?
Boxing Day always has a special feel. I suppose more so recently because we've expected to win. First Boxing Day since when I moved back from England was 2013. So I've only really known us to be competitive. Since watching, I know obviously before that we haven't won a on Boxing Day in 17 years or something like that. And the way things are going, unless Portadown put a really big run together, it could be the last one for a while, because I'm not sure even if they go down, they'll bounce straight back up again. That being said, I would expect us to win. And I'm relieved that Portadown have won a match. I know that sounds a bit strange coming from a Glenavon fan, because there would have been even more riding on the match had they have gone into this on the back of, was it 20, 21 defeats, 22, whatever the record was. The record, if they had lost all of those games, they were either going to beat that record or stop that record against themselves on Boxing Day. So from our perspective, I think we're a bit happy that they've won a match, and it's in a non-controversial way. So Ballymena does a bit of a favour there at the weekend. I do think we'll win, but it's never going to be easy. It'll be by the odd goal, or it'll be an attritional one like last season, where that was, it was a case of get ahead and dig in with 9 men.
Fun weekend, really fun day of games, no matter who you support, or you even just want to have a little gander and see what's going down. Should be bumper crowds across the league. Dave, been an absolute pleasure. I'll have to get yourself on, or even just a man from the Glenavon world where you've actually played a game. Last time I had Mr. Michael Scott from your crew. A royal passing interrupted the entire schedule of games. So we'll have to get you on reacting to a game. Usually I'm a scud for whoever comes on. But Dave, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. There we are. There you have it. Big long one. I thought this was going to be a short one. Very few games. And then all of a sudden we talked about the games forever, and we got into the biggest, deepest mid-table chat about the Irish League ever. It just happens when I get these random fun people on. So I'll keep this short. Thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Got lots of new people. Got lots of podcasts coming to you as we go along. We're going to be covering next week games. We're going to be covering, I'm booking in my crew for my Boxing Day Irish Cup. All the fun things. So if you want to be here, I'll be there for the festive period, all that type of stuff. I'm going to keep cracking on, baby. So what you want to do is follow Kick and Match on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, maybe Spotify, or those things. Can you follow people on Spotify? Follow me anyway, that'd be good. Help me along the way, I'm sure. And of course, if you want to play it out loud in front of your significant other when you're, I don't know, cooking, dancing, having a boogie. Hello, if you're listening to this on Christmas Day, you're probably not. Thank you. Just ask your smart speaker to say, hey, smart speaker, please play Kicking Match and Irish League podcast. Guys, this has been great. Chat to you soon. Bye-bye.